Sunset Conversation is a live stream project which brings in conversation international of related people.
Welcome to the 18th session of Sunset Conversations. Hi Dylan.
Hey, how's it going?
Great, great. I can see we both have some kind of wetness in our hair.
Yeah,
Which
yeah.
is cool.
I was thinking,
Great.
I'm like, I hope my hair is okay, and I looked at my hair and I'm like, it's not okay.
No, it's great, it's great. So welcome to Sunset Conversations, Dylan. And I can tell everyone that you're seeing the future of three-dimensional painting artists, because you really are, and soon you're going to enter the art books.
I appreciate
I'm a
that.
big fan of your works. I'm a big fan, and I've got lots of questions. First of all, I'd like to start by asking you something. I went through your website, and I kind of visualize an inner instinct of bringing something out of a flat surface. And that happened in your first series of paintings with the spikes coming out and bringing color almost horizontally. And then you developed this new technique of melting materials and creating this kind of psychedelic landscapes, which are really impressive. And I wonder, do you feel that painting lacks of this third dimension, which is given by perspective but not by an excess of material, and hence you decided to bring this third dimension in your pieces?
Yeah, well, you use the word instinct, and I think that is, and feel. And I think that those are two very appropriate things, because they talk about, like, people who think, like, more in kind of like a logical, procedural manner, and then people who think based off of feeling, and you can tell which kind of person someone is based off of how they describe their life, whether it's like, I feel this or I think this. Like, that basic descriptor isn't like a core indicator. And I always say, I feel this, even though I've actually seen myself as a very almost like hyper, like cognitive and involved person in my mind. So like, but my art is sort of a break for that. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a lot of people who have an extensive theoretical background in what they're doing. And I feel like I have an extensive theoretical background in like how I pour a cup of tea. And so when I do my art, I want to let go of that. And I find that the more I let go of these reasons for every little thing that I do, the more alive I am, and the better ultimately my art is, even though I'm more at a loss for words, which is an uncomfortable place for me, because I feel like I can describe, you know, I could tell you the reasons for why my cup is on the plate it is in the morning, and why I chose that plate, and you know, why it is this tea, and the 10 elements I like about this tea, and where the tea came from, and who made the tea, and the store I bought it from, and all these different, the shelf I purchased it on. And you know, but then with the art, it's less of a word thing. But yeah, so there was an instinct I had immediately when I started painting. I guess I really started painting like years ago in sort of the style of Jackson Pollock. And I think that a lot of what I do still has things that he was doing, you know, like core elements of like just letting chance take over and stuff like that. But then I immediately started cutting up the surfaces I was painting on and arranging them into geometric shapes with just cardboard. Like, I was doing this, I don't even know if it's on my site anymore because I spend so little time on my site, but looking at my site, which is a problem. But yeah, arranging the paintings in this geometric way. And I think for me, it allows me to get more involved with a painting if there is literally a physical space to sort of look into. You know?
Absolutely,
So,
I totally agree.
Yeah, and in that sense, and like the thing is, like, there's painting, like representational painting, like as you were talking about, like perspective, like creates the illusion of an environment for you to enter. But my
exactly.
paintings create an actual environment.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that more satisfying. And I think,
Absolutely.
you know, it's interesting, like, because I feel like as I've been doing these very textural paintings for like 5 years now, like, there seems to be more and more people who are also doing something like this.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm into that. But it seems like there's a lot of people who also feel like they want to create an environment with a painting and not just the illusion of an environment.
Absolutely, and in fact, you really do. When I see your painting, the first thing I imagine is yourself lost in your studio, which I guess becomes this sort of magical fantasy environment with these organic forms, or that grows in a way. And I actually wanted to speak to you about this. That I wouldn't even call your work a bas relief, but as you said, the creation of an environment. And I really appreciate when you have the chance, museums perhaps, to create a whole wall. And I like the fact that you turn it as well, so you can really feel this sort of embracement through your environment. And I wanted to ask you something a bit technical. I know your works are made of wax and paraffin, and I wondered, how do they react to the weather and to temperature?
Well, it's the wax I use is the highest melt point wax you can buy. So it melts at 163 degrees. And as of right now, there are no places in the world that get that hot. But like, so it can be in a like 75-degree environment, like, you know, someone's house with air conditioning on, and then receive direct sun, and it's totally fine. But UV, like, so sunlight, UV radiation, like, does something different. Like, it has more energy in it than just like whatever the temperature is. So like, it can be like 150 degrees in the dark, but if it's 150 degrees and then there's sunlight, it's actually it's a way more energy rich environment, so it can melt faster in that environment.
Okay, I mean, that's good to know. If there's any collector intended to buy a painting now listening, they should keep it in the fridge. Another question that I had is related to the fact that you use a certain and clear color palette, which is often associated to two things in my mind. First thing, street art, graffiti artist, and second thing is, of course, the fantasy images of the early 900. So this kind of initial landscapes of mushrooms and fairies with all these violets and yellows. Is that related to something that you feel it expresses more your concept, or those colors are related perhaps to the technique that is similar to the street artist graffiti spraying, or is just, I don't know, just a color palette that you feel connected to personally?
Yeah, well, I never was like a street artist. It's funny because I feel like I do get put in like in comparison with them, and not just you, but in some of the galleries that I show with. But like I'm totally I don't know, I'm totally cool with that. Like I don't really think that there is as much. I don't believe in the hierarchy that is published by the art world, and I think if you can reach a lot of people, if you can, and they
Absolutely
appreciate something, then that has value just as much as reaching a small amount of people and really affecting them. Like, both things have value, and I'm just trying to do what feels natural for me, and like just really express exactly how I'm feeling without any kind of preconceived notion, or which I see as a barrier to doing that. and whatever comes out, I think is pure and therefore interesting. But I'm not consciously saying, oh, street artists like use this palette and I want to reference that, or you know, I want people to see me as like a psychedelic artist, and so, you know, I want to use this. Like, it's funny because I live in Colorado, and here in the States, like, Colorado is one of the first places that legalized marijuana. And so everyone's like, oh, you live in Colorado, and like, this is the kind of art you make, like, you must be high all the time. And ironically, I actually can't smoke weed. Like, it makes me super paranoid. Like, I actually hate it. And I've never done mushrooms or acid, you know, and
I think that's something with the abstract painters. They often get asked, what kind of drug do you use?
Yeah.
Because there is this misconception that drugs could help creativity. And I mean, I could debate about that for a long time. Not saying it could not, but I don't think it's a driver for creativity. Yeah,
I don't think it's a driver. I think they can help creativity a lot, and just as much as help, they can also hinder creativity. You know?
And kill it at one point.
Yeah, and literally kill you. Which will kill all of your potential future creativity as well as the creativity in that moment. So
absolutely.
But like, yeah, I'm not anti-drugs or anything like that. I mean, I'm drinking a beer right now, but
cool. That helps.
It's just for me, you know, like, yeah, I'm not sitting there in my studio like on mushrooms making these, like, you know, 90s posters.
Another question for you is, I had one really that I wanted to ask. Let's see if I can put it in the right way. It has to do with an interview that I watched. I really like your attitude during interview. You really know what you're talking about. You're really close to your art. You can tell it's authentic. You can tell you control your medium a lot, and you're in power of what you're doing. It's not random, and sometimes it's not something that every abstract painter has. You can tell when an abstract painter is not in control of his medium. You mentioned Pollock. There's lots of studies that prove how Pollock wasn't random in his movement, and in fact it's really hard to imitate his technique.
Yeah.
And that makes a big difference in the message that you send through art. And in fact, you said the medium that I developed is the most important bit of what I do. The process is my art. The final piece is just a result of it. But you feel more attached to the process rather than the result. And I find this quite interesting. And I wondered if you could talk through this sentence a bit more with us today.
Just on a practical level, like, I'm attached to my process because and I won't go into the details, but I've created, it's gone through multiple iterations, and actually the work that I'm creating now for this solo show I have in London with the unit, I created a completely new tool or iteration of my tool to make that work, which I'm pretty proud of, and but just made my life easier, because I used to have to carry around this like 40-pound thing, and like everything I do has to be like hot. Like, so I have heating elements that like keep it at above 160 degrees, which you can't touch without gloves and protection. So yeah, I mean, I'm attached to the process because I've literally created, you know, 4 or 5 different tools and procedures and multiple different apparatuses, 4 or 5 different versions, and then multiple apparatuses and tools around that. And like, I didn't take this from anywhere. I like hacked objects I knew did something similar to what I was looking for, and like modified them and did the engineering myself. And when I was in school, I got grants for engineering as well as grants for art, because I also really like that side of it. You know, it's like a different brain, and I like using both. And then the process, though, is sort of, that's like the practical, logical reason for why I'm attached to the process. But then there's also like the act of making the piece and then that process. And I feel like what's going on there, leads a final result, but the actual sort of like sequence of movements, almost like a dance, is very important to me. And like it's like this, it allows for, if you're lucky, like a sort of like a flow state where you're not well, and exactly a flow state where I am not consciously deliberating at each move. There are thousands and thousands of moves that go into a piece. Some of my larger pieces take months, and that's hours of every day working on them. But you can lose yourself doing that, and that is incredibly valuable to me. I think that, and you don't have to be just making art. You can lose yourself.
No, very, very interesting point. Do you feel your process still needs to be a secret? Something you need to protect?
Why do you ask that question?
Because I'm also what you can call a process-based artist or technique-based artist. And there was a time in which I felt very not comfortable to expose my process. I was talking about it. I was saying there is a process that I created behind my heart, but I couldn't present it because it's a danger, especially when you're not totally established.
Yeah.
But when the years went on, and the process was in my hand and I was controlling it, I wasn't scared anymore. I kind of felt it like I could even share it because it would just make my art more established. Because if someone else is even imitating my process, that means I'm recognized then, and I think with process artists, it's something that really we have a stage in which we need to protect ourselves quite a lot, and then a stage in which we need to really feel free and make it out loud. And I wondered what's your stage, because I couldn't really find yourself actually making your pieces.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that is not a random choice. And I wonder how scared you are of losing this kind of magic, because it is a magic. You are a magician, and you're creating magical environments.
Thank you. Well, I guess I mean, I think I'm still I have been in, and am still in a protective stage as far as the literal process. But I could certainly perceive a future or a point in the future where I am no longer as protective. And I think I was thinking about the other day, I'm like, if I'm afraid of just people copying me, well, in order for someone to copy me, they would have to, first of all, invest a lot of time and a lot of money, like imitating me. And because you can't just go buy the tools I use, you have to build them yourself. And then you have to buy all of the materials I use, which are unfortunately very expensive for me. And then hope you can get it right. And it's taken me years of knowing kind of exactly what I want, and sort of what I've done in the past and what I want in the future. And I fail all the time trying to get this thing right every time I make a change, and even if it's small. So there's a huge barrier to entry to that. And you really have to be, I think, so lame, just to be
I agree.
The kind of person that spends that much time and money and effort, trying to copy someone else. It's just do your own thing, if you spend that much time and money and effort on your own thing, it might be equally or more interesting,
What you're saying is very rational. But fears could emerge anyway that you feel a bit paranoid about, Some people could copy. But I guess they'll you're really doing really well, and your shows are quite known around the world, and people need to catch up quite a lot before reaching to your level of melting and creating magical environments. We're getting to the last question, and this is related to, it's quite conceptual again. I want to ask you something, and I want to know whether this is connected to your process, to the limit of your process, perhaps, or perhaps it's just a choice that you feel more connected to this technique. So, in all your art, I feel there is an organic form growing out of a flat surface. At this stage, I didn't see any of your work coming out without a flat surface. So out in space. So there's always a flat which extends itself, changing its language from a straight line to this kind of environment.
Right.
So in other words, do you experiment your technique in sculpture as well? Is that something you're planning to do? Or you really feel like your growth needs to be attached to a flat space, which then grows out?
Well, I have other, like, I guess I have other processes that are, I have like another process where I just use resin, and it's a completely different process. You know, but I guess actually that work kind of emerges actually out of the air. Like I hang it from the ceiling and I grow it off of strings that just build from this suspended place. And I'm actually going to be doing a big installation for Meow Wolf, which is a museum opening up here in Denver, with that work specifically. Plug. But yeah, I mean, the thing is that with the paintings, like I've always enjoyed the parametric constriction of working off of this strictly flat surface, and just seeing like what I could do with that, because I know that I could actually make really interesting shapes with like even just slight armatures, you know what I'm saying? Like something to build off of. But it just feels like less, I don't know, honest or challenging. Like I feel like I hear like comedians talking about this a lot. Like they don't want to get easy laughs. They want to get like laughs that are like hard to get, you know? And in an abstract way, I guess that's associated with like my work. Like I want to make these really interesting shapes, but I want to do it in like this pure, often very challenging and time-consuming and expensive fashion, which maybe will change because it's exhausting. So...
Wow. So, Dylan, thanks a lot for joining me today. We got to the end, and I was thinking, if you want to test the durability of one of your piece, we can stick one here on the table. It's pretty sunny and hot, and we can do like a good assessment at the end. No, yeah, it was really nice talking to you, and honestly, I'll try to come around when you're in London at your show.
Yeah.
Because I'm really interested to see your works in person. But anyway, I'm going to be at the unit very soon. If they still, if they already have maybe just one of your piece, I will go there and touch it, if you don't mind.
Yeah, you can touch it. Okay, that's all my. But
okay, I'll do some blood test as well to your piece to see what's inside. Thanks a lot, Dylan, and I wish you the best luck with your solo show. I'm sure it's going to be just amazing as your art is.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that, and it's been a pleasure talking to you. Ciao.